Welcome to the second podcast of our interviews of mental health professionals. And we have a yoga instructor by the name of Trey. He goes by Train with Trey. Trey, you want to introduce yourself or everything you do?
Yeah, so I'm Trey. Thank you all for having me. Excited to just talk about, the benefits of yoga and wellness more broadly. But I am a certified yoga instructor, 200-hour yoga instructor. In addition to that, I also teach HIIT and a little bit of just like everything. My main focus in like Train with Trey is really like unifying the mind, body, and soul. Originally from Atlanta, Georgia. I also kind of wear multiple hats, but in addition to that, I throw experiences in New York, DC, Atlanta, a little bit of everything. I feel like somewhat an outcast day by day. And also am in finance, so work in product management as well. So I wear a few hats, but really specifically now, really trying to tie in like wellness as it relates to everything. I think no matter, how big profile, high profile, whoever, I think we all can benefit from just times where we're out of our heads and in our bodies. So I try to do that through intentional movement.
I like it. Man of all, jack of all trades. My guy.
Mm.
Um, how'd you get into yoga?
It was a kind of unconventional path. I would say, I think growing up, I like playing sports. I knew a little bit about yoga, honestly, through Kobe Bryant. Um,
Okay.
yeah, that's really my first exposure. And then I think kind of growing up seeing um as I grew up, seeing how the body or how like different instances can impact or like physical, emotional elements can impact the body. I think I like kind of learned that or experienced that. And then I think growing up, as I was like getting a little bit more into my, I guess me or learning who I was in New York, working in New York, full time offer, was working there for like 2 years, and then got laid off. Long story short, moved to Atlanta for a second. But before I moved, I remember going to a yoga class to this black woman, and it was like I would almost say like a life changing, like out of body experience, where I felt like high essentially, but it wasn't it wasn't really feeling high the more I like know now. It was just like I wasn't in the future, I wasn't in the past. I was like present in my body and I felt like super light. It was one of those moments where I was like, oh, this is like, I don't know, I could just like I was like out of my body looking at myself. I was like, this is wild. And then so through that, I kind of started like to look at different studios and would go to different classes and I would think the thing that stuck out to me was often I was the only male, only black male for sure in these classes, and just thinking through the health outcomes of black and brown communities, I was just like, we need this. Like, if anybody needs this, we need this, right? So I try to add my own spin to it, add some southern playlistic flavor to it. But yeah, that's really my interest into it. And now it's like learning more about yoga. There's so many kind of different types of yoga that you can do. And really becoming mastering it, but also like understanding I'm still a student, right? There's no like point where I'm like, oh, I know it all together. So yeah, that's my interest in the yoga, and it's been super dope.
Your personal experience with it, you kind of went into like we're gonna ask you about sharing your personal experience. And you went into it how you were in your situation, you went to a class and you felt really good coming out after that.
Yeah.
It's definitely a positive that we we see here and I felt myself, and that's kind of another avenue that someone can release their stress. Like we have the range room, you have your yoga, and I bet
Mm.
your students have felt the same way for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten great feedback, which is like, I think oftentimes we can be super critical of ourselves. And often, I mean, especially within yoga, like you get your 200-hour teacher training. I have previous experience, like, as you all know, being a HIIT instructor in DC, shout out to Slut DC. And I think, sometimes you get that feedback and that positive affirmation from your students. So it's always like welcome, especially when I first started. It was super like dope to have them like say like I felt so at peace. Like they might comment on the music. I've had classes in Brooklyn where like we have a whole backyard where people are able to like get out of Brooklyn per se. Like my whole goal is to like transport you in like a spaceship somewhat, like with the physical space, with your physical or your kind of like emotional space, and then like the music as well.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that. That's one thing about yoga is, and here as well in some aspects, like you're somewhere else and you're thinking specifically, but being present about what you're doing. You're not really thinking about what what has happened that's giving you the stress, or you may have let it go. And that's one
Yeah.
of the positives that I've definitely seen in your classes and here as well. So yeah, they definitely have some similarities with what like we do and what you do and how
Mhm.
we're helping people deal with that stuff for sure. Are there anything that like when you do get a new person that's into it, what kind of things do you recommend when they are new to yoga, or they're looking to yoga to try to help with their mental health, try to help with their stress?
Mhm.
Are there any 2, 3 things you could recommend to them that you would?
Yeah, I mean, I would say first, like your practice is your practice. So I think it's like going into a class, there are varying levels of experience, and our bodies are all different. So I would say for one, it's like giving yourself grace. Like, I had a funny experience. This probably will answer the question. I went to a class in DC, and I would say like I'm pretty like, yeah, I'm athletic. I'm pretty fit. But the instructor, I was with a friend, and the instructor was like, all right, headstand. The whole class is like forehead up headstands. And I'm like, yo. And I kind of like tried to just like reverse it and be like, okay, I haven't done that yet, but I can do it. But I think that is a good like illustration of what somebody may be experiencing in class. So I would say for one, just like your body is your own, and like kind of like you can use other people as a guide, like for what to do. So if I say like downward dog, I'll kind of coach through it, like press into the elbows of your hands, like push your heels down. But if you don't, if that example doesn't speak to it, you can kind of look to your left or your right. But I caution folks in terms of comparison, just because you know, these people have been doing that and practicing these moves for ages and for decades, right? So doing that. And I think also like coming with open mind too. I think one of the similarities between like any type of movement, yoga, lose it, rage room is like it's a moment where like we don't have our phones. And like I hate to sound like an old like grumpy old grandpa, but
No, you say it. Speak on
I
it.
feel
Sure.
like the world is kind of reverting back to human touch, human interaction, and like we're most present when we don't have our devices, right? So, even with cycling, I'm a big cyclist, and like the times where I'm on my bike, whether it's like on a stationary bike, or out in the park, like it's a time where I'm not on my phone. I'm interacting with people, and I feel like I'm the most present. So yeah, I would say those are like the key traits, and then also I think come with the beginner's mindset, like just be open to what the teacher tells you. I think there's a level of trust that also has to be in the room too, because like I'm a stranger talking to strangers, so I try to create like that level of like transparency when I first like start to meet people, or like how can I connect with somebody, make them feel comfortable because they might not have never seen a black man in the front of the room that might be a little bit more buff with tattoos, and like, so I think
Facts, man.
it's a dope experience, like, yeah.
Well, he answered that. You definitely saw you create like a space for a newbie, for someone who does, have those thoughts that aren't, ideal while you're in a yoga class, how you kind of quell those fears by
Mhm.
being by creating that space to be inclusive for everybody. So
Yeah.
he answered that for sure. Let's see, are there any like anything specific that you had with one of your students that kind of they gotten over something or they were going through something and and say that it helped? Like, have you had a student come and like be a little more open after they would have more open, like I was doing this, thinking about this, and then it kind of like you helped them out a little bit?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a specific example, but I would say for sure, I think even like broader in New York, I used to teach in Tribeca, which is like right near Wall Street. So like for someone who's unfamiliar with New York, it's like near the World Trade Center, which is where a lot of banks and finance like your
Right.
JP Morgan Chase, your Goldman Sachs, your Moody's Analytics, which is also where I used to work, like near that area. So you have a lot of like professionals that are in that area, who are often running to class and a little bit more stressed. So I used to do this evening class. It wasn't a candlelight class, but it was in the evening. It was at 8:30. And I try to really be intentional about the music, and I had a few like feedback sessions with folks, and when they were like, hey, I really enjoyed this class. I really felt like at home and at peace. Didn't go into like a personal story necessarily, but I could tell that they were saying like I needed this like reset. It was more of a not yin yoga, but we held the poses a little bit more, and the music was a little bit more, I wouldn't say somber, but it was a little bit more, I don't know, like open, I guess, like a little bit more heart forward is probably the best way to describe it. So yeah, I've gotten like good feedback with that. And then also too on the flip side, like I've been trying to think through what is like a power flow, because I kind of like the yin and yang of like there's times where we should chill and breathe, and there's also times where we can move and sweat, right? So how do I kind of like design a class that touches both?
Right. To have that range between
Mhm.
the two. Absolutely. It's cool, man.
What specific I know there's different types of yoga, like vinyasa, which one do you specifically do?
Yeah, so I'm trained in vinyasa. So I was
Okay.
trained at core power yoga. More of a, I mean, it's heated yoga, hot yoga. It's not Bikram, but it is hot yoga. The room is usually around, for the C1 classes, around 93 degrees. Um, it's a definitely an athletic flow. But they do have other class offerings. So they have like hot power fusion, which is a little bit more it's a hot, the room's a lot hotter and you hold the poses a little longer. They have yin yoga, or a type of yin. It's called like a restore, but it's essentially where you're really breathing into these poses, and like really maybe like in your hips and in your lower back, right? So we hold a lot of stress and emotion there. So sometimes it might it might feel a little bit, it might be a bit of discomfort, but that doesn't mean it's like bad for you. And I think that
Right.
that kind of perspective is like good, because everything, yeah, like even with weights, like they're heavy, but I mean it's bad for you.
Right.
That's true.
And everybody, those lower backs, everybody has something. Everybody can, my this, my that. I
Yeah,
think that speaks to everybody for sure. Like, you never know where it hides. And that's one thing that yoga will definitely help you
yeah,
figure that out. I know mine is in my back. Like for me, yoga gets me into my breath, and that you just don't know it till you go into with it, what it can do for your stress and what you're feeling. Like you can breathe, and then for me, myself, because I can't speak for everybody, myself, like kind of resets, and all right, things, we got this, we can work it out. But that's just me. Um, uh, is that what kind of things does yoga do for you? Like when you need to release that stuff?
yeah. I think right now, like it's kind of interesting. I think coming out of the pandemic, I bought a like stationary bike. Or in the pandemic, I bought a stationary bike, and I've never really been the type to be in my house. I mean, you all know me. I just
Yeah.
so I tried it, right? And like doing yoga in my house alone. But I think for me, like the community is like one aspect that I like really appreciate. And also for two, it allows me to just like kind of like reset, to your point, Cody. I think it's like, I don't know, man. We're like so programmed. Like it's just like a mile a minute. And I think sometimes like we don't get a second to just like chill out. So in addition to like the physical like asana practice, like I think it's one of the things where I am able to just be in my body, like on the mat. And I think the more challenging the poses sometimes, like the more kind of dristy, which they call focus. But if you're doing like a tree pose, or like pigeon, or not pigeon, but like tree where you're balancing on one foot, or warrior three,
Right.
they tell you to kind of find a point or your dristy or your focus. So it kind of helps you focus more too. So I am now trying to, in addition to being a teacher, like be a student and find like a consistent place where I can practice as well. Because I think we all benefit from it. Like I don't, and there, depending on the type of like person or preference, there's so many types of yoga. And I think specifically like, I mean, it sounds like wild, but like I'm like, why don't churches have like yoga? Like, it's just like
If you get your stuff off and mentally in church,
in some way, like, and I think
Always got a multi-purpose room.
yeah,
There's a
there's a
a
Peloton instructor. Yeah. There's a Peloton instructor that I know. Well, I don't know her personally, but I've taken her classes and she has a gospel flow. And like you kind of be surprised, but I'm like, it makes sense how these things can kind of like interchange, or even something as simple as like trap yoga is a thing. But I think it's like I try not to be too purist when it comes to like different practices because people you can meet people where they are. Like you have to kind of, somebody playing like I might have a yoga class with classical music that might not appeal to everybody. You know what I'm saying? But if I play some Outcast or something like that, and figure out a way where it makes sense and you still get like a rest at the end, and like why are we limiting ourselves to that?
Right.
Yeah.
seems like you're creating a good safe space for people to let go all their stress and any type of mental health they're having. So that's a good thing. I really like that part.
Yeah, it's important too. I think as we like, I don't know, I just think we're just more stressed. Everybody's just like, I mean, there's stress, there's anxiety. I think just like the way we look at our bodies is also changing. And I just think that like, if you can just have a second consistently, and I think the emphasis on like consistent practice, like between giving yourself grace, but also like understanding like that. I think one of the things that I've been focused on more so is like discipline now, as it relates to my personal practice, but just like overall, like what is it? I think Elliot Kitchoge, the world he broke the 3 hour barrier mark in a marathon, and he was like the two things or two kind of tidbits he has is like vitamin N, which was like vitamin no, learning how to say no. And then the second one was there's freedom in consistency, or basically freedom in like a routine. So that's one of the things I've been trying to like do more, have a little bit more structure as well. And that like structure in terms of like I have an actual like home studio. There's a few that are actually popping up around Brooklyn too, which is so funny. So yeah.
Okay. So how would they reach you? How would they reach you? Do you have a website? Are you doing personal classes? Do you do classes somewhere else?
Definitely. So I'm based in Brooklyn, New York. I follow me. I would say my website is trainwithtrey.com. And then my Instagram is Trey X Cox COX, so TREYXCOX. So I teach classes in pop-up classes in Brooklyn. I'm also in between Atlanta and DC a lot. So I try to at least once a quarter teach a class in Atlanta or DC. So yeah, follow my socials. I post everything there. It's like I guess like a scrapbook or something if I'm not traveling or something like that. But yeah,
Okay.
check me out there.
Bet. Well, we appreciate your time, big dog. Thank you for everything. It seems like I said, it seems like you're literally making a safe place, a safe space. People that you got it. The people that what I'm saying, need that release, that stress release, that release. That's what we're both trying to do. We're trying to just combine all this. If they don't get it through us, they can go on our website because we're gonna put your information on our website. So if they want to reach out to you, maybe you can do some online stuff with them, stuff like that. It will definitely work. We're just trying to combine all this mental health, different avenues.
Definitely. And shout out to y'all too. I mean, I think it's super important. The physical aspect of just like I'm a strong fan of you all. Seen it since the beginning. And it's dope and excited to see you all continue to expand. I think it's just important to have like a tool, like a wellness toolkit, like
Yes.
One of my favorite hobbies is going to the movies, and sometimes I just like go to the movies. I like to get popcorn and beer, and I kick it. But other times I want to do 20 miles on the bike. Other times I go to the rage room. Other times I like lift or need community. So I think if we can create somewhat of like a toolkit for folks that know what's out there at the kind of in there available for them, I think we'll be so much better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's pretty much all I have.
That's it, Cuz. That's all I got too. Thank you for we made it happen for sure.
Absolutely.
We love it.
Appreciate you, big
So
dog. And keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep doing what you're
Always.
doing.
For
See y'all
sure.
soon, man.
Yes, sir.